Limbus Company's been out for a few months now. We have 3 chapters, and a canon side event to dig through for juicy details. So let's do that. Oh yeah, it's Limbin time. In this video, I'll go over what new information we learned about the city, as well as any standout points and questions raised from what we see. I unfortunately don't speak Korean, so we're going to be going with the full English translations. So pardon any translation nuance loss that might occur. I will also save any info we learned from the identities and ego for another video, covering what we can glean from all that we see in Season 1. If there's something I left out that you feel is important enough to make a note of, please leave a comment. I do my best to respond to every comment, and will look to corroborate whether I missed something or simply deemed it too nominal to recap. Dante's Notes is also dropping May 11th, which is sadly the day I leave for my job again, so I have to get this out before then. If you are watching after May 11th, check the description for any corrections to the video. Also, if something is brought up in this episode as a question that is answered in a later chapter, please be courteous to other viewers with spoilers in the comments. Starting with the prologue in Chapter 1, here's what we learned so far. The prologue is chock full of initial information, but it will spread out as we go on. Something that might be easy to forget is that Dante very rapidly lost his memory. Obviously, he knew what he was doing after installing his head, but with Iori's goons, Wolf, Panther, and Lion chasing them, it was rushed. Specifically, he mentions being interrupted while engraving a redacted subject. These engravings are probably very important for the clock to work perfectly. Before rereading Chapter 1, I personally was not convinced Dante wasn't a distortion, but after rereading the chapter, perhaps his prosthetic truly is a singularity. Turning back time isn't something we haven't seen before, especially with the TT2 protocol. Pure speculation, but perhaps the gate Dante sees is some true higher power, or the gate to hell that is accessed through such technology. The trio also mentioned that he had a different head the last time they saw us. I can't imagine Dante replaced his full human head with a prosthetic so quickly and by himself. That means he either had a different prosthetic, or the clock came with some seriously user-friendly instructions. We also know that the trio does work for Iori, given the purple bands with snake scale texture. Virgil tells Panther to return to that snake, very clearly part of Grandma's design motif. Speaking of Iori, she doesn't want Dante himself, but rather what he knows. Now that he has no human mouth and can't speak, as far as they know, they opt to kill him then and there, before they are interrupted by the sinners. Dante was also already wearing the Limbus Company outfit, so it's clear he isn't some random new recruit, but rather genuinely suffering from heavy amnesia. We can see that Dante had no connection to the sinners until his now granted immortality. Except maybe Faust. The chains bursting from his neck connect to each of the 12 sinners in a very dark photo. We can clearly make out Mersal and Sinclair, as well as Rhodey in silhouette among the others. Faust is obviously very high up in the chain, seeing as she is the one who recruited Virgil and Charon to the LCB. I'm also convinced that the LCB department stands for Limbus Company Bus Department now. The way Virgil speaks to Dante makes me believe he can hear us and is lying, or they guessed what we were saying. Equal chance of either, I'd say. I'll try not to entertain too many theories in these videos, but with how obscure a lot of info can be, I like to show my work and what line of thought made the info important for me. With the combined effort of Faust effortlessly translating for Virgil, and his knack for getting to the point, I lean on the side of him not actually understanding Dante. Some points do raise the issue in question, but for now, Faust specifically mentions that ticking is a side effect of an outdated ideas from his head replacement. She admits that one does not need a tongue or vocal cords to speak. That just sounds like Faust speak to me. Rodian mentions Dante being a big shot in a nest before all this. Whether that is true, or just some rumor from Rodian, is yet to be seen. No one seems to conflict the information, so I'll be treating it as fact until otherwise shown. Though we knew it from promo material, it is here that we learn that Yi Sang used to be a feather at a wing. To recap, it is the same wing where Gubo worked and developed their identity singularity. The biggest thing we learned from Heathcliff's intro is that Limbus Company has an HR department. Crazy. Don Quixote is specifically mentioned to be enraptured with the role of a righteous fixer. What I've been wondering since launch is the question of Limbus's role in the city. Is it an office? Fixers do stand out in Dante's memories despite his amnesia, but we have yet to see anyone refer to the sinners as fixers, other than Don Quixote herself, or that they are given a rank thus far. We know that Dawn is an unreliable narrator as she refers to the fixers as protectors of the city, while others know them as wage slaves, and barely better than those of part of a syndicate. I am firmly in the camp that Limbus Company isn't a fixer office. If I miss something, please let me know. Dante remembers more French than he does about his own past. Oidis is obviously not impressed with us, but speaks up to us with surprising praise once we are fully her manager. Either in clear reverence to her superiority, or her keen intelligence gives her a silver tongue and she simply wants to be on our good side. Her face when complimenting us for the first time has me torn. Oidis' previous jobs had her meeting a lot of different people, including working at a workshop herself. I'll hold more comments until her chapter reveals more. She, or the company, is oh so obviously hiding something that we can't even look into her own personal records, and instead warns us to be wary of her. I will hereby be instating an Oidis sus counter. We already know why Virgil has stronger emotions for Charon out of everyone on the bus. For those that don't know, but don't want Leviathan spoilers, skip to this time. Charon is the identity that has overwritten Lapus's. She's from an orphanage that Virgil ran in the past. Limbus Company has promised Virgil to work on returning her to her original personality in exchange for the cooperation. At the end of the chapter, we can see Virgil asking Charon if the sinners failing to capture the bow will hinder their progress. Perhaps they need the bows in return for Limbus Company to offer their services to help Lapus. Charon's wit has no bounds. The Glass Maiden is a person brought up by Don Quixote. The naming convention rings eerily of a colors title, but without a color. Perhaps simply a famous fixer given Don Quixote's fixation. Looking back on the map of the city and using the scale provided, we can see that it is roughly 200 kilometers by 200 kilometers, giving us a 40,000 kilometer square area. That is right about the size of Switzerland. Switzerland has a population of 8.7 million people. However, this only makes up the populated area of Switzerland, and not the entirety of the landmass like the city is. The highest population density in Switzerland comes out to roughly 2,600 people per square mile. If we scale Switzerland's densest population to be proportionate to their whole 39,000 square kilometers, we would get a measly population of roughly 100 million people, a magnitude off from the 1 billion we were given earlier. If we take the population density of Karachi, Pakistan, we would get about 1,009,160,000 total people. Only 9 million people over a billion. Not too far off considering the rough numbers we're playing with and the scale we're at this point. This is assuming all 40,000 square kilometers are pure city and don't have too much mountainous or rural areas. However, it opens a whole nother can of worms I call logistics. Food, water, breathable air all come to mind as simple hurdles. But in a setting where we can literally put time in a box, that's an issue for someone who actually lives in the city to figure out. Math is over because in reality, we see what is assumed to be a population count by the indication of numbers to be in the 6 billions rapidly counting down, making all this math utterly useless. That means the city is almost 7 times denser than one of the most populated cities in the world. I am losing my fucking mind over this. The door Dante stands before is most likely the infamous Gehenna Gates, although it misses the iconic statement of abandon all hope, all ye who enter here. Dante describes being able to feel sins as he stands before it, so I have no reason to believe otherwise. We also cross the threshold into hell quite early on into Inferno. Oidus seems immune to the fear a color would bring down on a person. Virgil brings up engraving of an aspect, most likely the redacted words during the opening chapter of the prologue. Does he mean the engraving before the head was installed? Has it been a few days since they reconvened after the amnesia incident? What exactly is an aspect? It's capitalized to give importance. Virgil indicates that it may help us find with the golden bow somehow. This line right here. It reads so weird. I mean, technically it's a proper sentence, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. The ellipses and the whole point it's trying to make is so vague it borders on nonsensical to me. And Kephalon is forcibly retrieved from the body through Mephistopheles. Previously, the singularity for L-Corp was needed, only further pushing my theory that Faust has strong ties to Lobotomy Corporation. Child labor is far from uncommon. Gregor states that some nests hire anyone that's old enough to wield a knife. Not entirely new info, but rather a confirmed thought. The G-Corp we know today is not the G-Corp Gregor was part of. The bug weapon users are not the same as the gravity-based singularity we have heard about given through the context clues. Even though it's explained thoroughly in a later chapter, here we are shown that Gregor is aware why Virgil has brought all the sinners together, making it clear that it isn't a hidden fact from all of the sinners. My beloved. Virgil says Dante might be the only person they can converse with. It's probably just because they are the quietest person on the bus due to our situation. Due to the collapse of the Megacorp, many people are still going after the old bases in a lobotomy rush, or in Kephalon rush, similar to a real-life gold rush. People refer to abnormalities as a species. I wonder how much of LobCorp's notes and research have been recovered so far, since Faust makes sure to note them as abnormalities instead of crude monsters. Deterrence is still in effect. The bows seem to be directly tied to it, as removing them will remove the deterrence. Perhaps this is solely because the bows are mentioned to be part of the energy production, as stated earlier, and is keeping the lights on, so to say. Or maybe it is a side effect of the bow itself. Unsure if it's a retcon or simply new notes, but abnos turn into egg-like forms when defeated now. Only possible note is that nothing there in Lobotomy Corporation when defeated, but that is a stretch from what is possibly a visual glitch. Ebony Queen's apple is a wa in the fight, but a he in the ego Ebony stem. It's not the first time we have seen this, as in Lobotomy Corporation we have seen egos that do not represent their abnormality. The Smoke War was confirmed to have ended at least a decade ago. Combined with the time spent in the TT2 protocol, Limbus seems to take place after, if not within a few years of the events of Dark Days and White Nights. Depends on if Gregor was accurate with his time frame, or just paraphrasing. It also lines up with the time frame of these dungeons still having valuable loot within them for an Enkephalin rush to occur. Without a hard timeline from Project Moon, it gets harder and harder to place these events, given that Library of Arena is also occurring after White Nights, but we don't know exactly how long after, or exactly how long the events spanned. Quarkus Village from Distortion Detective indicates that it's been quite some time since the end of Lobotomy Corporation and the beginning of Library. The whole thing is just too messy right now with such loose dates. Anti-Abno grenades are super toxic to human as well, but I think we just refer to that as toxic. Fun note, the music that plays during the sad moments in Limbus appears to be a rendition of Third Trumpet. Big guns do exist. During travel in the past of the Smoke War, we can hear artillery being fired. Gregor appears to have gotten his surgery around 15 years of age. Either the surgery was to keep his bug parts from growing further, or simply was applying his arm in general. We are shown a bomb that ages one rapidly, perhaps a product of T-Corp. Everything in the memory is subject to Gregor's mind, so some things must be taken with a grain of salt. He just mentions N-Corp when referring to a pointless activity of keeping a memento. Dante will react strongly to bows when nearby, a corroboration of Virgil's point earlier about being able to find the bows. Though we later find out that there are other tools helping them locate these bows. Herman's crew follows the sinners, as they seem to know where the bows are. She also mentioned the bows are a bit small, perhaps not fully grown. For those that haven't read the fan-translated chapters of Leviathan, it is shown to us that Herman was at some point or is still among the directors of N-Corp. She seems to have jumped around from nest to nest, indicating her cunning and ruthlessness, since she was previously with the old G-Corp. Yiseng's old co-worker, Gubo, and Hongling's brother, Jiahuang, are both part of this crew as well. What we can see in the opening scene is a great deal of antagonists that make up a parallel group to our group of sinners. And that will make up what we learned from the prologue in Chapter 1. I cut out a lot of speculation that came from the smaller nuances, but I kept a bit of brain fodder in. I hope you all enjoyed, and are looking forward to my recap of Chapter 2 and 3 next month.